Hello again, everyone. It's good to have you with us for this event. It figures to be an exceptional one that doesn't need any build-up.
Are you ready?
Don't ever give up. Don't ever stop fighting.
This is the main event of the evening.
Athletes, huddle up. It's time to begin. Get focused. Let's go.
Athletes, take your mark, get set. It's time for the Addict Athlete Podcast. Everybody, Coach Blue here with the co-host and extraordinaire, our athletic director, Marissa Robinson. Say hi.
Hi, happy to be here.
It's good to be on the air and being able to help you guys in your addiction recovery process. Hope this is working for you. Please download these podcasts, share them with friends and family that might be struggling. It's a good resource for them to use and to go back and gain a little bit more knowledge on what addiction is, how you can overcome it, and heal from it.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of information that helps the person in recovery, family members, or somebody that isn't even related. There's a lot of good information for just life and challenges in life. And, please leave us a review. We'd love to hear how these are helping.
Absolutely. So, athletes, before we get rocking and rolling on today's topic, I want to remind you that our online store for our athletic gear is up and running. It's our website, addict2athlete.org. You can also find a link to our online family support group. We've decided to help the family at large. You've noticed a few things as you've been navigating social media. What have you noticed that we really need to dive into on that family meeting?
So there's so much information on how to get your loved one treatment and help. And then there's horrible sharks out there that attack and try to get your money that way. But I think the person that gets hurt the most on the sidelines are those family members. They just give and give and give and give, and they're just left just tired and used and abused, and they don't know where to go and where to turn. And I just think that we need to do more for some of those family members, those cheerleaders we talk about. And so we're starting a family support group. Yeah,
and athletes and listeners, we are a 501c3 nonprofit and have actually gained some funding for this. So we have some limited spots available. If you don't have the financial funds, right now we have a special offer for $50 a month, which is 4 groups per month.
Yep.
But for anyone that needs this, we have some limited spots available. So if you jump on and email myself or Marissa through our website, we can get you connected on there to jump on for free for a couple months, because we've got some resources to help you. So don't let the financial part be a push away, right?
Yeah.
And, just as our community resource activities, we wanted to let you know that in November, Team Addict Athlete participated in the Remy Turkey Trot over there in, what was it, Alpine?
American Fork
Alpine area. Yeah. And this was a special little run. It was one of our first heavy-duty snowfall events, right?
Yeah, on Thanksgiving Day.
But this was for a young man who had cancer, correct?
I think it's a brain tumor, and he just started chemo that day, or pretty close to that day. And this turkey trot picks a eligible person that needs a lot of help every year, and this was the choice this year for this little 5-year-old boy. And they were able to raise that day over $11,000.
That's amazing.
It's incredible.
So that's what happens when you get all the troops out there to help, support this kind of stuff. And for all the athletes and those who participated, Addicts Fighting Back and our due treatment. Yeah, they were out there. Thanks for coming out, because I know that money certainly is going to help that little family. So what a great way to give back.
Yep.
We also want you to stay close to our website so you can keep an eye on our social media content, because we're doing tons of things. But we have our Project ELF. Addict Athlete participates in this every year. And this is one of those side things I never thought would happen. How cool is this Project ELF? And how many kids are we doing this year for Sub for Santa?
Yeah. So this year we have 14 families who have needed help and assistance. All, I think every single one of them are in recovery. And they are just struggling to get by. A lot of times new into recovery, you haven't learned how to budget, or you've lost so much that it's hard to get caught up. And sadly, like I said, family members, those little kids suffer. So Addict Athlete steps in and does what we can to help. So we have 14 families this year, a total of 40 children that we are helping. We will be doing our wrapping day this next coming Monday, December 16th, and meeting with the parents and helping them wrap their gifts and see what the community and what our what our team has done to help support them through this holiday season.
Yeah, so thank you for all the donations, specifically those that were just rendered on Giving Tuesday last week. We are grateful for everyone who's contributed. It helps Addict to Athlete continue to do things like this, and there's still availability to donate whenever you have the ability. You can follow those through our website, addicttoathlete.org. But thanks to all those who've donated, you will definitely make a huge impact on those kids
absolutely.
that really needed that support. So thank you. But without further ado, I think we get into today's topic. We touched a little bit on it, but you and I have been noticing through social media and through some of the things that we've noticed comment-wise that we still don't really know how to deal with a drug-addicted family member or loved one. There's still a lot of questions out there. And I say this quite frequently, and I'll stand behind it. We are so lucky in Utah because everyone's competing for service.
Yeah.
We have so many
Support
programs that
groups
pop up. It's like one a week now, that are popping up out of nowhere. And it could cause jealousy in some eyes, but to me, I look at it with open arms and a huge heart because I'm like, wow, this is how many people are feeling the need to get active. Yeah. And through that principle and through those concepts, I start noticing that one thing that kind of lacks is, what about the residuals? What about the families? We have a lot of stuff for the people in active addiction themselves, but what about building that home team, to gain that home court advantage? We're going to talk a little bit about that today, but start us off. Let's talk a little bit about what you've noticed, just the trend on social media. You noticed about 2 or 3 key factors, I think, that kind of stand out to me. One of which was the gender gap, the gender bias.
Yeah, there's so many females that are non-abusers that have a spouse or a boyfriend or a significant other or a loved one or a son that just, so lost. And I don't know if it's just the nurturing, key in women that they're not just easy to just write them off. Yeah. And so they reach out, and there are so many great online support groups for people that, can kind of help give you somebody to feel like somebody else is in your corner. Yeah. Because being on the sidelines, it's heartbreaking to watch your loved one out there on that field of battle and just taking it every single time and just hit, and they're just going down and feeling lost. What do I do? How do I do it? How do I help but not enable? How do I love? And, is tough love correct? Does that help? Does it not help? There's a lot of new trends and topics and research about that as well. But they just don't know a lot, and we need to do more to give that information.
What I've noticed is that when we get to a roadblock in understanding or in the topic itself on how do you help, most frequently I've seen people respond and just kick them out, just kick them out to be done. Easier said than done, right? Absolutely. I mean, you got to be careful with that, I think, because we're not that person. And to say that would work for some and maybe not for others, I think is very correct and very true. But we got to be careful on the advice that we give, because there are some that are so desperate, they will take that as gospel and then completely screw it up. Yeah. So we got to be careful. So these are just some stuff that and topics and pointers that we want to kind of enlighten you with, because with everything, there more research and more education needs to come about. And again, if you find yourself in this situation, reach out. Team Addict to Athlete can help guide you, support you, move you to a direction where you can find this help. But
I think one thing to remember too is everybody is individual. Every addict is individual, and every family member. And so it's really hard to say that this is what you do every single time. It's doctrine. Everyone does it, and you have to do it, and it's the only way to help. Every situation is different and has different dynamics. So even as we talk today and we give advice or ideas, remember that you need to answer that yourself. Everything's different. And like Blue said, we're here to help. If you want to contact us and give us your situation, it's sometimes better if we have that backstory to be able to answer, because there's not just the addiction. Some people have the dual diagnosis and have the mental health and the illness behind it that needs some different ways to navigate it. And, be open that you may have to even change your game plan partway through, that there are, and that's, I think, what makes it so difficult. There's not really black and white ways of doing things. Yeah. So we're going to share some really good ideas and things that we've noticed and some trends that we notice really help. But remember, everybody's on their own, and make the decision of what's best for you and what is best in your heart, and following your gut feeling.
Yeah. Well, and right off the gate, as we line up and take that starting time, we got to make sure that you understand that the very first thing you should do if you have a loved one that's struggling with addiction is to educate yourself about the addiction.
Yeah.
Okay, because we all get into the situation we want to be these armchair coaches and coach from the armchair, but you've got to educate yourself, and it's not just by Googling it. Like, seriously, get in, talk to professionals, get involved on some good internet searching. Realize that you're going to find so many like counterproductive sites too that will say, hey, one way to solve the opiate epidemic if your loved one's on opiates is to have them start smoking weed.
Yeah.
No, like there's so many outlets and things. You've got to be able to spend the time and the energy to seriously research it. That's one that I think kind of falls to the wayside a lot.
Yeah.
Most people don't want to talk to professionals because that means they have to talk about the problem.
They think that they are a problem and that's weakness. And truly, there's so much information on the internet. You can be able to educate yourself so much about heroin, about, what it looks like, what it smells like, if you're wondering if my child's using and you're noticing certain things, but you're not sure what that means, Google it.
Yeah.
In most cases, you're going to find the right answers right there online.
Yeah, you want to focus on information from sites with medical or scientific orientation, right? You want to look for trustworthy sites. Specifically, I've noticed university forums, ones that don't have a biased opinion on either side, but just give the information and the content. I think that's beautiful.
That may not be backed up by some medication and some pharmaceutical company.
Yeah, because learning about the characteristics of your loved one's addiction can really help you understand what to expect. Because remember, you're just at the starting line right now. So it can provide guidance on how to address the situation. Because if you're a parent of a 18-year and younger minor leaguer that you're suspecting is using, this is something I've noticed from the old playbook of Coach Blue. They're going to be using, on average, for 2 years before you ever realize they have a problem.
Yep.
That's a crazy thing when you think about it, because we know our kids so well, right?
Yeah.
Last week we just had a podcast with Savannah, and I was blown away. But like I said on there, Savannah, I know you have secrets that I don't need to know about right now.
Yeah.
But you guys, I understand, even the best parents that know everything about their kid, there's going to be secrets. So on average, 2 years. Why do you think it takes about 2 years on average for a parent to really see it?
Well, I think that there's so many ways they can do things outside of the home. I mean, it's a natural progression that children begin spending more time away from home with friends, doing other things, and it takes a while for
grades start to slip, and they always have a great excuse on why, right? And then they bring their friends over, and they kind of are like, hiding and slippery and all that stuff. And so if you found yourself in that situation, congratulations, you're on the average. And it's not that you're a bad parent. It's just that you guys, these kids are good.
They're sneaky. I mean, they know that they shouldn't be doing something, and they know how to hide it.
Yeah.
And like you say, it isn't until you see some of those other fallback behavior things adding up that you start noticing.
Yeah.
Well,
and that's the thing, right? With youth, that's the way. Even with adults. I was talking to an individual a couple weeks ago who was saying to me that they didn't really think that the individual that they loved, spouse, hanging out in the bathroom for 2+ hours was really a bad thing until they started realizing that not everybody does that.
Yeah.
What takes 2 hours to do in a bathroom, right?
Yeah.
And either they got some really bad digestion or something else is happening.
Well, and that's it. They're going to say that that's the problem because, right at first, you're going to be like, what's wrong? Are you okay? And they're going to have excuse after excuse. But if it's continually, no, people don't spend that much time in the bathroom.
Yeah.
There's sign number one.
Absolutely.
If there's a bag that they're carrying with them everywhere, they won't let it go.
Right.
It's never left on the side. There's a red flag.
Yep. Well, and then I notice in those situations, as you're educating yourself, you start getting these warning signs that start popping up, right? There's a concept out there that I'm really fascinated by, because I didn't realize it until I saw it firsthand, and that's that concept and principle of gaslighting.
Oh, yeah.
That's a big one, I think, in addiction, especially as you're starting to understand the complexities of it. Gaslighting, where it's like you truly believe that it's your fault, that your loved one's addiction is your fault because they've been able to convince you of that. And that's all it is. They've convinced you of it.
Yeah.
And then you've believed it, and it has become your normal for so long that all of a sudden now when you start questioning it, you start questioning your own understanding and functionality as a human.
Well, and to reach out and say, oh, I messed up because it's my fault, that holds people back so much because they believe they caused it. Or, if they wouldn't have said this, and this, then they, their loved one wouldn't be out using.
Yeah, and that's not the case. As you're in this process of learning about the addiction itself, you got to recognize the complexity of addiction because, like you said at the very beginning, it's not a one size fits all. Mm-hmm. Addiction is complex, it's widespread, and it can be really difficult to tackle. So it's tempting to think that the drug user, the addict themselves, they just have poor morals or their willpower is something to be left desired, right? Mm-hmm. But the underlying problem is that there could be a biological issue. We talked about this with the doctor, a few weeks ago on addiction in the brain. It's a good podcast to go back and listen to after this one because it's going to help you understand where that biological factor kind of starts to take hold. Yeah. And so, drug abuse and addiction is so widespread that they say that people that get into addiction in their teens are more likely to need long-term sobriety services and treatment services than if you are to start actively using after that. So family complexity from the youth growing up, it's a big indicator. So when you're educating yourself on addiction, you're also educating yourself about your spouse's history. There's a lot of things that happen where we fall in love, we're blind, we have these masks on, right? We're falling in love.
Everything's great.
Mm-hmm. You get married, the mask comes off, and you're like, ooh, what did I get here? And eventually you'll fall out of love. We talked about this before too. That process of falling out of love can be devastating because you're always trying to get back to falling in love stage when you first met that individual and you remember the good stuff. So it's a little harder to kind of say, wow, I was unprepared. I didn't know this kind of stuff. And I don't want to give up on this person because I love them. But remember, when you're dealing with this stuff and the masks are off, you're literally falling out of love. Yeah. So it takes a little bit of courage too to kind of say, am I willing to stick through this?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, I've heard many people say, oh, they just changed after we got married. No, that's sometimes, yes, that is the case. But I think often it is that falling in love, you are blinded. You are absolutely and fully blinded by those red flags and maybe those signs because of that euphoric feeling of twitterpation and love that you don't notice it. And when you finally fall in love, that can't last forever. It's not a long-term thing. All of a sudden they're like, oh, they've changed. And then if they didn't change or you're like, I did see red flags, then you just feel dumb. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'll just stay. Yeah. No, let's find a way to, and maybe it is to stay, but be educated. Yeah. And when you're educating yourself, you have to learn about treatment models and therapeutic interventions. Mm-hmm. Now, athletic director and I, we've worked in many of these programs, adult specifically and exclusive. And I've noticed a few things that I want to share with the listener so that you make the best decision on what your family needs. And I say family because it's not just the individual addict, right? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's more than that. So as we're looking at this, I want you to understand that there's a few different platforms and modalities, right? Now, the Queen Mary Mother crown jewel of them all is residential treatment. Mm-hmm. You've done a lot of these biopsychosocials where you've taken in information. What level do you believe the individual has to be at? Not just insurance company, because they have their own set of rules. Yeah. But like the degree of use, what would you say would necessitate a intervention like residential treatment? So often that is where, there's situations where they've lost jobs, the transportation's low. So there's an issue with employment, transportation, social. They've lost family members and loved ones and pushed them away. They're using on a daily basis. And most most drugs that they're using, they need something to be able to detox off of it. It can't be something they just stop tomorrow and just quit using. So, but there's a difference. There is also what's called detox. And so detox is usually, 1 to 7 days situation. Mm-hmm. And there's facilities out there that just do that. And I think that can really be beneficial for a lot of individuals. I do know that there's a lot of individuals that go into detox and think this is all I can do is 3 days. I can't be away from, family or whatever else. And so they do 3 days, and then 2 months later they do 3 days, and 2 months later they do 5 days. And then, and it's just this repetitive cycle. If you're going to do just detox and then go home, you need to have a very, very strong, structured life to be able to transition back. I think people can do detox and get clean. Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I've seen people be able to do, residential treatment, which is usually, 30 to 45 day stay, kind of getting that break, that, situation to be able to get out into a safe environment, heal their brain a little bit, have some structure, build up understanding of, some of their core issues and learning daily routines and things like that. But there's so many different options out there.
There is. And listeners, you have to be very cautious when you're going down this path, because, one thing that really turns my stomach is that treatment at that level in a residential form is way expensive.
Absolutely.
And so the individual going in has to have a little bit more than just a court order, right, to stay clean. There's got to be that desire, because you'll get your hopes up. They'll go through and stay clean for the 90 days if that's the amount the insurance company will allow you to hang out there for. And they'll get out and struggle. You've got to have, that's when the throttle needs to be all the way down, full force, full court press, everything, because the investment, the money that goes into that is astronomical. And it can be very disappointing when you have multiple residential treatment stays. We've heard parents talk about this, and it's kind of heartbreaking because they put so much stock and stewardship in the hope.
Yeah.
But then when they don't actively engage in it, it's like, well, that was nothing.
Yeah. 30 days is going to work. It's so expensive, or 45 or 90. But it really does come down to the individual themselves.
How fast does that go?
Oh, so
Quick.
fast. So fast. If you have insurance, please utilize it. There's, research treatment centers, if you can afford that, monthly premium, get your loved one into treatment that way. In fact, one thing right now, it's open enrollment until December 15th. Get a hold of an insurance agent, get your loved one on insurance right now. If you think in the next calendar year they may want and step up and say, hey, I want help, you can have their insurance premiums out there for $5 a month, and you can have your treatment covered. Go for it, but you have until the 15th to do it, December. And
no matter what, make sure that you're invested. Now, this is the thing, as we talked about this in the brain addiction podcast, is motivation's only going to last so long, but when the biological factors of withdrawal start kicking in and the psychological factors of withdrawal, then that's where the real
the emotional stuff is so hard.
Absolutely. And I think any program that you get yourself into on a residential level needs to have a very strong family support system connection, right? Because it's not going to be, here, fix my loved one, and then I'll just stay on the course. You've gone through the battle with them. You've seen some things. You've experienced some things. Stuff has been said. There's been harm done. You've got to take care of yourself too. And I know a lot of times spouses and loved ones don't want to get too involved at this level because they're afraid that they're going to be attacked, because this person now is up here receiving all this therapeutic content. Who knows what's being said in the therapist's office. So